Well, hi everybody again. I should have hidden the clock back there, but if you look over my shoulder, you see the clock. It was only finished the last chapter a moment ago, and I changed my mind, decided to read one more chapter today. So, hello again to Jackson, Matthew, Marjorie, and Emma, all here in Maine, Malia and Lucas in Missouri, and hello to Kai Ming and Ru Kai in Washington State, to Hope here in Maine. I always get mixed up when I say hi to you because there's a town named Hope in Maine also, right down near Camden, not far from here. Excuse me. And Dylan here in Maine. Lucas in Maine. Hi, Lucas. To Leslie and Mary, our dear friends over in England. Ezzy and Indy in Oklahoma. Kayla here in Maine. Sylvia, Macy, and Lillian in Maine. Happer and Judson in Maine. Kaden and Xander here in Maine. Evangeline and Isaac in Rhode Island, and Mabel and China over in the Far East, halfway around the world, and Oliver, Madeline, and Wyatt out west. Okay, there. Now, back to Grandfather Frog and his adventures. Chapter 19. Grandfather Frog jumps into more trouble. Oh, no. Oh. Ugh. Some people are heedless and run into trouble. Some people are stupid and walk into trouble. Grandfather Frog was both heedless and stupid and jumped into trouble. When Striped Chipmunk told him where the spring was, it seemed to him that he couldn't wait to reach it. You see, Grandfather Frog had spent all his life in a Smiling Pool, where he could get a drink whenever he wanted it by just reaching over the edge of the big green lily pad. Whenever he was too warm, all he had to do was say, "Chug-a-rum," and dive headfirst into the cool water. So he wasn't used to going a long time without water. Jump, jump, jump. Grandfather Frog was going as fast as ever he could, in the direction Striped Chipmunk had pointed out. Every 3 or 4 jumps, he would stop for just a wee bit of rest. Then off he would go again, jump, jump, jump. And each jump was a long one. Peter Rabbit certainly would have been envious if he could have seen those long jumps of Grandfather Frog. At last the ground began to go damp. The farther he went, the damper it grew. Presently it became fairly wet, and then there was a great deal of soft, cool, wet moss. How good it did feel to Grandfather Frog's poor tired feet. Excuse me. "Must be almost there," said Grandfather Frog to himself, as he scrambled up on a big mossy hummock so as to look around. Right away, he saw a little path from the direction of the long lane. It led straight past the very hummock on which Grandfather Frog was sitting, and he noticed that where the ground was very soft and wet, old boards had been laid down. That puzzled Grandfather Frog a great deal. "It's a sure enough path," said he, "but what under the blue sky does anyone want to spoil it for by putting those boards there?" You see, Grandfather Frog likes the soft, wet mud. He couldn't understand how anyone, even Farmer Brown's boy, could prefer a hard, dry path. Of course, he never had worn shoes himself, so he couldn't understand why anyone should want dry feet when they could just as well have wet ones. He was still puzzling over it when he heard a sound that made him nearly lose his balance and tumble off the hummock. It was a whistle, the whistle of Farmer Brown's boy. Grandfather Frog knew it right away, because he often had heard it over by the Smiling Pool. The whistle came from over in the long lane. Farmer Brown's boy had had his dinner and was on his way back to look for Grandfather Frog where he had been dropped. Grandfather Frog actually grinned as he thought how surprised Farmer Brown's boy was going to be when he could find no trace of him. Suddenly, the smile seemed to freeze on Grandfather Frog's face. That whistle was coming nearer. Farmer Brown's boy had left the long lane and was coming along the little path. Excuse me, folks. The truth is, he was coming for a drink at the spring, but Grandfather Frog didn't think of this. He was sure that in some way Farmer Brown's boy had found out which way he had gone and was coming after him. He crouched down as flat as he could on the big hummock and held his breath. Farmer Brown's boy went straight past. Just a few steps beyond, he stopped and knelt down. Peeping through the grass, Grandfather Frog saw him dip up beautiful clear water in an old cup and drink. Then Grandfather Frog knew just where the spring was. A few minutes later, Farmer Brown's boy passed again, still whistling, on his way to the long lane. Grandfather Frog waited only long enough to be sure that he had really gone. Then, with bigger jumps than ever, he started for the spring. A dozen long jumps, and then a long jump, and he had landed in the spring with a splash. "Chug-a-rum!" cried Grandfather Frog. "How good the water feels!" And all the time, Grandfather Frog had jumped straight into more trouble. And that's the end of that chapter. We'll read the next chapter soon. Okay, goodbye, everybody.